Hey everybody, this is Loli Jane, animal communicator and energy healer from animals-speak.com, and you're listening to Loli Jane Animal Communication Podcast, the show that promises to open your mind and heart to the amazing world of animal communication, energy healing, and what I like to call interspecies therapy. Thanks for joining me. Today, I'll be talking about what animal communication is and how it works. We'll discuss everything there is to know about what I like to call interspecies therapy and how it can help resolve many issues. So, what is animal communication? Animal communication is simply telepathy, sending and receiving thoughts and images and feelings. Telepathy is a primary language of animals and how they communicate with each other. The animal vocalizations that you hear are just for warning calls, for calling their young, and for mating. That's not their primary means of communication. Their primary means of communication is via telepathy, and that's how they talk to other species, other animal species. And because animals are telepathic, we are also telepathic as we are part of the animal kingdom. In the words of my teacher, Carol Gurney, telepathy is not a gift. It is an innate human ability that we all have. We are not all telepathic. Why is this? Well, because we have not developed or practiced this innate skill. In our early childhood education system, we don't teach telepathy as the language skills are being developed. So most of us are unaware of this innate ability that we have, or worse, they disbelieve that it exists. Animal communication is not the same as psychic. We are not making a psychic guess in animal communication. Rather, we are communicating with animals directly via telepathy. Telepathy is a real science and used currently by the military today. It has a rich history dating back to the indigenous Aborigines. The Aborigines used to use telepathy to contact the nomadic tribal elders when they have left the villages. When they needed help or there was an emergency in the village, they used to contact the tribal elders, and they would hear a telepathic sound in one of their ears, and that signaled them that they need to telepathically communicate with one of the members in the village or one of the members of the tribe. So this goes back to the Aborigines, the ancient indigenous culture. We also use telepathy. Human to animal telepathy was used during the time of the hunter-gatherers society, communicating with a wolf for assistance hunting. Let me explain telepathy a little bit more in detail. As I mentioned, telepathy is sending and receiving thoughts, images, and feelings, and sometimes even pain. Depending on the sender or receiver, you know how some of us are more auditory and some of us are more visual? Well, it really depends on the sender and the receiver, and that includes the animals and the animal communicators. Some animal communicators will receive more images and some will receive more auditory, and animals are the same way. Some are more visual oriented and some are more auditory. When I talk to animals sometimes, depending on the animal, some animals will send me a lot of images and speak less, and other animals will speak a lot more and also send me images. So it really depends on the sender and the receiver. So telepathy has to do with the senses, the sense of sight, sound, smell, feelings. Not all animal communicators are the same. We all have different gifts and different strengths. Me personally, I grew up profoundly hard of hearing, so I became a lot more clairaudient than most, which is hearing outside of the normal means, because I couldn't hear on the normal level, so I could hear in the extrasensory level. So I can hear the tone of the voice and the personality of the animals. It's pretty exciting to me because I can get a true sense of what this animal is truly like and report it back to the person. But as I said, not all animal communicators are the same. We're all very different from each other, and we all have our own strengths that we come in with. I also personally get images, smells, sounds, feelings, and even empathetic pain. So one time I had a client with a horse that was lame and had an injury in one of its legs. And I do energy healing on animals. I do pranic healing. And so I asked the horse if it was appropriate or if the horse would like to get a healing. And the horse, yes, yes, yes. And at the end of the session, I told the caretaker, the person, that their horse wanted to have a healing. And they said, well, maybe we'll do it another time. So they kind of put it off and put it off. Well, they called me the next day, and as I was speaking to them, I said, I think your horse really needs a healing. And as I was saying that, and as I was speaking to the person, the horse dropped me to the ground. Literally, I was lying in the street with the same horrible pain that horse had had. I don't wish this on everybody, but this is how we can get empathic pain and actually feel what somebody else is feeling. So right then and there, she agreed, okay, let's do the healing now. And as soon as she said, let's do the healing, the pain came right out of me. It was amazing, just astonishing to me. So here's how it works. Let's go into the nitty-gritty of exactly, energetically, how this telepathy works. So when you think a thought, and this goes for everybody, by the way, not just animals, but all beings. When you think a thought, you send out what is called a thought form, which is like a big, giant soap bubble. Do you ever see one of those big, giant soap bubbles being blown up? Or a child's small soap bubbles? So this is what a thought form is like. This soap bubble, or thought form, goes out into the universe. So every time you think a thought, thousands of thoughts a day are like floating out into the ether. Your thousands of thoughts are all bubbles, and they can't be destroyed unless you know how to retract thoughts, that I do, but most people don't. So you can't destroy them. They're out there. So it's really important that you think only thoughts that you want things to happen. But that's a whole nother podcast. So let's talk about these thought forms. So you have these soap bubbles or thought forms that are picked up by the receiver, who is able to translate this thought form into a usable language as words, images, smells, sounds, or feelings. So telepathy is a universal language, no translation needed. For example, I've talked to animals in other countries that were trained in other languages. I've talked to animals in Switzerland, I've talked to animals in Italy, and they were all trained in other languages. And I could still communicate with them. I don't have to have a translator because it's your mind that makes this jump. So you take in the thought form and it's translated in your mind as whatever language and images and sounds and feelings that you use. The other interesting thing about telepathy is because animals can hear your thoughts, you must always tell the truth. You cannot tell a lie to an animal verbally. Let me repeat that. You cannot tell a lie to an animal at all even verbally. They know the truth because they can hear your thoughts. So I had a client that wanted me to tell their animal that they were going to a park, a dog park, instead of going to the vet where they were actually going. And I had to explain to the client that an animal can hear the truth because they're literally they're hearing your thoughts right now, telling me this to lie to them. And instead of them hearing the lie, they're going to hear betrayal. And then they will be thoroughly pissed off at you for betraying them. Animals do not like to be betrayed by their person that they love the most. They do not want to have trust issues with you. So if you repeatedly have one thought and you tell them something else verbally, they're not going to trust you. They're going to feel betrayed, and it's not going to be a good thing. So you must tell the truth. And this is great because it's training you how to speak to other human beings, which is to always be authentic and speak the truth. So it's wonderful animal training from animals. So let's talk about exactly how does animal communication or telepathy work. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. Animal communication or telepathy can be done in front of an animal or remotely. Everyone always asks me if I walk around hearing animals talking to them all the time. The answer is no. I do not have an open door policy where I hear animal voices all the time. The only time that happens to me is when I'm drifting off to sleep or I'm in a dream. Sometimes when I'm drifting off to sleep, an animal will start having a conversation with me and I'll see an image of an animal. Sometimes in dream time. But the normal waking hours, no, that door is closed. And I only invite the animals when I call them up. Okay, so I don't walk around hearing voices or animals. And a lot of times when I meet people on the street, I'll, talk to them, meet their animal, their dog, and I'll tell them I'm an animal communicator. They're like, oh, what does my animal say? Well, I have to tune into your animal for a second, just like I have to tune in to your conversation. It's not like they're walking around just talking to me when they don't know me, right? It's just like talking to a human. You have to tune in or call up the animal you will be speaking to. It works just like calling your friends on your mobile phone. When you call your friends on your mobile phone, you think of them first, you look up their name, and click to dial their phone number, or you can use Siri or Alexa, or your Apple CarPlay. Your mobile phone uses satellites to connect the two mobile phones together. You can think of these connections with the satellite to your phone to the other person as ether energy as well. So it's very similar. Animal communication is done instead of using a device like your phone to dial a person, but I call up the animal using their image, their name, and their person's name, and their connection to their person. And that's how I call up each animal. Instead of using satellites, animal communication and telepathy uses energetic connections, which is almost the same thing as the satellites, without all the equipment. The equipment is innate and internal. So if you want to think of, I have a giant satellite dish on my head or in my third eye, then you can think of it like that if it helps you. It works a little bit different, and in another podcast, I'll explain all about energy healing and the chakras. So how can animal communication help? Well, it's a bridge between the person, the caretaker, the pet parent, and the animal. By directly communicating with the animals, just like we communicate with each other, animal communication is more like going to a family therapy session. Again, I like to call it interspecies therapy, since we can have a two-way conversation and communication with the animals and their caretakers to help find the actual root causes and solutions for any type of issue. Here are some of the issues I can work with as an animal communicator and energy healer. And I say I because, like I said, we're all different. We all have different gifts and strengths. Not everybody does energy healing. Not everybody does all the different cases that I work with. So it is really important that you understand that we're all different. So I work as an animal communicator and pranic healer. So here is what I work on. I work on behavioral cases similar to a new behavior that has started and you are not sure what it means or what the cause is. It could be an old behavior or a new behavior, but I can assure you, if your animal has a behavior, they are trying to show or tell you something for a reason. They never do anything for no reason. They always have a reason behind their behaviors. And some of the behaviors could be emotional, like separation anxiety, general anxiety, depression, PTSD, and a host of emotional things that, just like humans, they have a full set of emotions and can feel down and out once in a while, or anxiety, just like we do. There's also behaviors such as what we call obedience issues, such as excessive barking, peeing or pooping in the house, or a whole host of what we call obedience issues. It's not really an obedience problem. It's understanding what the animal is trying to show or tell you and where the root cause comes from. The other issues that I work on are physical and health issues. I can provide valuable details for the vets to assist them in their diagnosis. For example, illness, trauma, injury, or disease. I can find out when the pain started, if it's acute or chronic, what the pain feels like. Hopefully, I will not have to feel their pain, but I can ask to exactly feel the pain if I need to. I can find out, a whole host of details that would be great to provide to the vet so they can further the diagnostic. And also, we can also ask the animal if they're open to energy healing and if this is something that would benefit them. A lot of times you can ask an animal what they think their body needs to heal. A lot of times they do know because they also have an innate body. So you can possibly ask them, they could possibly tell you what that is. So many of these issues that I mentioned so far have to do with mirroring. So I also work with mirroring issues. So many animals, it's not their issue. The behavior or the physical or emotional or obedience issue, sometimes it's not their issue. They are simply mirroring you. Just like your children or spouses mirror you, they are providing you with a service and a gift by doing so that you can see what you need to work on. And that is like a divine gift by your animal to take on your symptoms. And I had a client once, the cat had an impacted bowel, and the client told me, they've tried every procedure, colonics and procedures and surgery and, all kinds of supplements and this and that. Nothing had helped. And literally the cat told me that it has to do with the anger at the mother, the female family lineage in the household. It doesn't have to do with the cat. The cat said it's not mine. It has to do with my person and her mother's mother. Okay, this is like astonishing to me. So I read it back to the client, and the client said, that's just truly amazing because I have an impacted bowel too, and so does my mother. And so it turned out that all three of the females in the family were angry at their mother. They had impacted bowels. She called me about a month later. She goes, "You're not going to believe it. The cat's impacted bowel is completely gone. And so is hers." And she's talking to her mother again. Her mother's talking to her mother again. It was just phenomenal. So I helped her by doing a forgiveness energy healing with her for the human. So I am available to help the animals, humans as well. The other thing I can work on is relationship issues like jealousy, animal hierarchies, or not getting along with other animals or humans in the household. I can talk to an animal about how they're relating to others and why they feel like they're being bullied or why they're jealous or etc. Another issue I can work on is death, dying, and end-of-life decisions. Like the dreaded end-of-life decision where the vet gives you 24 hours to decide. It's awful. I had to go through it. It's awful. So I can ask them if they are ready to leave their body or not. Some animals can be completely emaciated looking, broken down, where you think they're on their last leg. And if you ask them if they're ready to leave their body, they will say, absolutely not. That I am not done with my lesson with my person, and I am not going yet. So please, please, please honor that when you get that. So please, I do emergencies. Please, please contact me before you have to make that decision, and I can help you. I will do emergencies. Please email me our emergency, get back with me right away, and I will, I promise. Okay? So please do that. And honor what the animal says. The other thing I do, and not all animal communicators will do this because it's very difficult, is I help locate lost animals by talking to the animals directly and getting many, many, many details, including if they are alive or they have already passed. The other thing I do is talking to animals that have already passed on. So I talk to animals in spirit, your soul animals, to find out how they are, how the passing was, how they are, if they've met up with any relatives or other animals that have already passed, how they would like to be remembered and acknowledged, how they would like to be memorialized, if they enjoy their life and completed their soul purpose. And if they're coming back to you, I can find out all the details of that, like how you can find them and what the signs will be and what animal they've chosen. I can also help explore past lives with you and your soul animal to help resolve long-standing issues from the perspective of the past life. In other words, I will take an issue that you have, one of those big, giant lifetime issues, those lessons that you've needed to go through your whole life, and I can go find the past lives where your animal was working with you with all of those lessons and find the first lifetime that it started and the successive lifetimes after that your animal was working with you to help bring these lessons to you. And I can resolve the issue by talking to the animal and you in that past lifetime, which is basically not a past, present, and future. It's another dimensional shift. So from that dimension or plane, I can talk to your past self and say, you don't need to carry these lessons forward. It's done. It's done. No more bringing this forward anymore. And so it's very resolvable for these long-standing issues. Another thing I can help with are finding your animal's forever home. If you're thinking about adopting, whether it's from an adoption agency or foster care, I can help you find the right animal and ask them what they want in their forever home. Some animals like to live with families and children, and others prefer the solitary life with just one individual. So I can ask them their preference. It'll save a lot of time and heartache, because sometimes people will adopt animals, they'll take them home and realize it's not right for their lifestyle. Like an animal that needs to use its legs a lot and run a lot. If it's a person who's at work all the time and doesn't have time. Or some animals don't want to be with children who are touching them all the time. And so instead of having to return the animal into the adoption network or foster care, you can find out beforehand if this animal will work for you. I also do remote pranic healing. Pranic healing is an ancient healing practice which is highly effective on animals by removing blockages and energizing the body so the body can repair itself. And sometimes there's instantaneous healing. Do you remember the horse that I told you about, the lame horse? Well, we did a healing on the horse, and I expected, maybe 3 healings before we got, great results. Well, she called me up after 1 healing. She said, "You're not going to believe this. My horse is no longer lame. My horse is running around the track," and I couldn't believe it. 1 healing. Some require more than 1 healing, just so you know, but this worked in 1 healing. It was just beautiful and amazing. So that brings us to the end of this episode. I hope you were informed and inspired by this podcast as I was when I first learned about animal communication. Please be sure to follow and subscribe for special segments only available to subscribers. Join us next week on my journey as an animal communicator. As always, love and gratitude for listening to the Loli Jane Animal Communication and Healing Podcast. That brings us to the end of this episode. I hope you were amazed as I was when I first learned about animal communication. As always, thanks for listening to Loli Jane Animal Communication and Healing Podcast. You can find me at animals-speak.com, animals-speak.com. I also have a YouTube channel if you'd like to actually see me, and that is Loli Jane Animal Communication. If you enjoyed our show, follow and subscribe for exclusive content. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to come back next week for a discussion on the journey of becoming an animal communicator. Until then, love and gratitude for joining me in this podcast. This is Loli Jane.